I didn't find the job. The job found me. That's what it feels like now, at least. 3 weeks ago, my life collapsed. Quietly. No dramatic explosion, no screaming matches. Just an email at 7:14 a.m. saying my position was no longer necessary, followed by my bank app lighting up in red. Rent overdue, credit cards maxed, student loans barking like hungry dogs. I sold my TV, then my guitar. Then I started skipping meals and pretending it was intermittent fasting. I was refreshing job boards at 2:03 in the morning when the listing appeared. No company logo, no location tag, just text. Seeking night caretaker. Remote location. No experience required. Immediate start. $6,000 per month. Cash bonus upon completion. $6,000 a month. I laughed out loud in my empty apartment, a sharp, ugly sound. It felt fake, like those scam emails written by bots. But the grammar was perfect. The punctuation was deliberate. Every sentence ended cleanly, like someone careful was typing it. There was one requirement. You must be alone. I should have scrolled past it. Instead, I clicked Apply. The application page loaded instantly. No lag, no branding, just a black screen and white text. It asked for my name, my age, my phone number. Then the questions got strange. Do you experience vivid dreams? Have you ever felt watched when you were certain you were alone? Are you afraid of the dark? That one had a timer, a little bar sliding down. I hesitated too long. The bar flashed red. I clicked No. The next question appeared immediately. Would you follow instructions even if they didn't make sense? Yes. Would you stay if you were told not to leave? I stared at the screen. My stomach tightened. Yes. The page refreshed. A message popped up. We will call you. They called 30 seconds later. The man on the phone spoke softly. Too softly. I kept asking him to repeat himself. He never raised his voice, not once. He asked me the same questions from the form, but rephrased, slower, like he was checking for cracks. When he asked why I needed the money, my voice cracked before I could stop it. I told him everything. The debt, the eviction notice taped to my door, the way it felt to wake up already exhausted. He listened. Then he said something that made my skin prickle. We prefer candidates with nothing to go back to. The interview lasted 7 minutes. He never told me his name. He never told me the company's name. At the end, he gave me an address and a date. Arrive before sunset, he said. Do not be late. I asked what the job actually was. There was a pause. You will be watching the tower, he said. And the tower will be watching you. The line went dead. I spent the next 2 days telling myself I was overthinking it. Plenty of remote jobs were weird. Fire lookout towers, weather stations, rich people with too much money and not enough trust. I sold my little I owned into my car and drove north. Cell service vanished an hour in. The road thinned from asphalt to gravel to dirt. Trees leaned in close, their branches knitting overhead. The sky dimmed faster than it should have. The GPS froze, then recalculated, then froze again. I almost turned around. Then I saw it. A fire lookout tower, rising out of the trees like a crooked finger. Metal stairs spiraling upward, a single glass cabin at the top reflecting the dying light. No other buildings, no cars, no smoke, no sound except my engine ticking as it cooled. A wooden sign stood at the edge of the clearing. No name, no logo, just 4 words, burned deep into the wood. You are on time. The sun dipped behind the tree line, and the tower lights turned on by themselves. The stairs screamed when I climbed them. Every step rang out, metal on metal, echoing through the trees. I kept expecting another sound to answer back. Footsteps, breathing, anything. But the forest stayed quiet. Not peaceful, held, like it was waiting. By the time I reached the top, my hands were shaking. The cabin door was already unlocked. That bothered me more than it should have. Inside, the space was small, but clean. Too clean. One cot bolted to the floor, a desk with an old radio, a landline phone, and a binder neatly centered like it had been measured. A kitchenette with canned food stacked by label. A bathroom with no mirror over the sink, just bare wall. The windows wrapped all the way around the cabin, floor-to-ceiling glass. The forest stared back at me from every angle. I closed the door and locked it. The lock slid home with a heavy clunk. Only then did I notice the smell. Not rot, not mildew. Dust, old paper, and something faintly metallic. I set my bag down and told myself to breathe. I'd made it. Whatever this was, it was real. $6,000 real. I could survive a few months in a box in the woods. The binder on the desk caught my eye. Plain brown, no label on the spine, just a single sticky note slapped on the front. Read this first. My laugh sounded thin in the glass room. Of course, I said out loud. Hearing my own voice helped. There's always a manual. I sat down and opened it. The first page wasn't a contract, no liability waiver, no emergency procedures. It was a note. Handwritten, heavy pressure, like the pen had dug into the paper. If you are reading this, I am already gone. This is not a joke. This is not hazing. These rules are the only reason you are still alive. I swallowed. The next page was titled simply, Rules. I read them out loud. I don't know why. Maybe part of me thought hearing them would make them less real. Rule 1. Do not leave any interior lights on after sunset. Use lamps only. If a ceiling light turns on by itself, turn it off immediately. Do not look up while doing so. Rule 2. Do not look at your reflection after 3 a.m. This includes glass, metal, water, or dark screens. Cover them if you must. Rule 3. If you hear footsteps on the stairs between midnight and 3 a.m., do not approach the windows. Sit on the floor and remain still until the sound stops. Rule 4. If the radio turns on by itself, listen. Do not respond. If it calls you by name, unplug it. Rule 5. If you hear crying from below the tower, do not investigate. It is not lost. It is not hurt. Lock the door. Rule 6. If someone knocks, do not open the door. There are no visitors. Do not speak. Do not acknowledge them. Rule 7. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the forest will go silent. This is normal. Close your eyes until you hear insects again. Rule 8. Do not fall asleep in the chair facing the west window. Rule 9. If you smell copper, check the stairs. If there are more steps than before, return inside and wait for dawn. Rule 10. Never, under any circumstances, go down the tower at night. The list ended there. No explanation, no signature. My mouth was dry. I flipped the page expecting more, maybe a punchline, maybe a gotcha. Instead, there was another note, shorter. You will think you can ignore these. I did too. You cannot. Please don't make my mistakes. I closed the binder and stared at the desk. My heart was racing, but a part of my brain was already trying to rationalize it. Pranks, initiation, some weird psychological test. Maybe the last guy had a flair for the dramatic. I checked the date on the wall calendar. Today was circled in red. Below it, someone had written, "First night is the easiest." I looked around the cabin again. No cameras, no speakers, no obvious tricks. The sun was fully gone now. The forest outside had sunk into shadow, the windows reflecting the interior back at me. My own face hovered faintly in the glass, stretched and pale. I remembered Rule 2 and stepped back. I laughed again, louder this time, forced. I'm not scared. This is just a job. The radio crackled softly. Just once. I froze. Then it went silent. I stood there for a long time, staring at the binder, listening to my own breathing, telling myself not to be stupid. Outside, far below the tower, something moved. And from somewhere deep in the trees, I heard the faintest sound of footsteps, starting up the stairs. I didn't move. That was my first instinct. Freeze. Listen. Let my brain catch up. The footsteps stopped. I stood there with my hands clenched at my sides, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Seconds stretched. 10, 20, a full minute. Nothing followed. No knock, no breathing, no voice calling up to me. Just the forest. I let out a shaky laugh and immediately hated how it sounded. Too loud, too desperate. Wind, I muttered. Animals. Old stairs. I forced myself to walk to the window and look down. Nothing. The spiral staircase wrapped around the tower like a rib cage, disappearing into shadow about halfway down. No movement. No shape clinging to the rails. The trees stood still, their branches barely stirring. I checked my watch. 9:42 p.m. Not even close to midnight. I went back to the desk and opened the binder again, scanning the rules like they might change if I looked long enough. They didn't. The handwriting stayed sharp and ugly. I told myself this was part of the job. Isolation messes with people. Sensory deprivation. The previous caretaker probably cracked and decided to mess with the next guy. That explanation fit. It was clean, comfortable. I made myself dinner. Canned soup heated on a hot plate. The radio stayed off. The landline stayed silent. The lamps cast a warm yellow glow that felt almost normal. I deliberately turned on one of the ceiling lights. Nothing happened. No flicker. No screaming forest. No cosmic punishment. I left it on while I ate. See, I thought, just rules, words on paper. After dinner, I did the actual job. Logged weather conditions, checked the horizon for smoke, filled out a form that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 90s. Everything worked. Everything made sense. That should have reassured me. It didn't. Around 11 p.m., the quiet started to feel wrong. Not silent, just thin. The forest sounds were there. Insects, wind through leaves, but they felt distant, like they were being played through bad speakers. I kept catching myself holding my breath, waiting for something else to layer on top of them. Nothing did. I paced the cabin to burn off the nervous energy. Each window showed the same thing. Darkness pressed up against the glass, my own reflection floating faintly over it. I avoided looking directly at my face. Rule 2 echoed in my head even though it wasn't close to 3 a.m. I hated that I remembered the number so easily. Midnight came and went. No footsteps. No knocking. No crying from below. At 12:30, I actually relaxed a little, sat on the cot, scrolled my phone. No service, obviously, but the familiar glow helped. I drafted a text to my sister anyway, telling her the job was weird, but fine. I didn't send it. At 1:10 a.m., I heard a sound I couldn't explain. Scratching. Not on the door. On the glass. Soft. Slow. Like a nail being dragged lightly across a window. I sat up straight. The sound came again. 3 short strokes. Then a pause. I crossed the cabin in 3 steps and yanked the curtain aside. Nothing was there. No branches close enough to touch the glass. No birds. No bugs big enough to make that noise. I stared into the dark until my eyes hurt. The scratching didn't happen again. I told myself it was thermal contraction, metal cooling. Old structures make noises. That's what Google would say if I could Google it. I went back to the cot, but I didn't lie down. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. I almost screamed. It was just the alarm I'd set earlier, a reminder to check the time. 2 a.m., 17 minutes before something was supposed to happen. Rule 7. I laughed quietly, shaking my head. "This is so stupid," I whispered. I stood in the middle of the cabin and waited. 2:16. The insects outside chirped. The wind sighed through the trees. 2:17. Everything stopped. Not faded, not quieted. Stopped. The forest went dead silent, like someone had flipped a switch. No insects, no wind, no distant animal calls.
The pressure in my ears changed, popping painfully. I suddenly felt very small, very visible. I remembered the rule. Close your eyes. I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed at me to look, to check the windows, to make sure nothing had stepped closer while the world held its breath. My eyes stayed open. At 2:18, I realized I could hear something new. Breathing. Not mine. Below the floor. Slow, deep, patient. And then, from directly under the cabin, something began to climb.
I didn't move. That was my first instinct. Freeze. Listen. Let my brain catch up. The footsteps stopped. I stood there with my hands clenched at my sides, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Seconds stretched. 10, 20, a full minute. Nothing followed. No knock. No breathing. No voice calling up to me. Just the forest. I let out a shaky laugh and immediately hated how it sounded. Too loud. Too desperate. Wind, I muttered. Animals. Old stairs. I forced myself to walk to the window and look down. Nothing. The spiral staircase wrapped around the tower like a rib cage, disappearing into shadow about halfway down. No movement. No shape clinging to the rails. The trees stood still, their branches barely stirring. I checked my watch. 9:42 p.m. Not even close to midnight. I went back to the desk and opened the binder again, scanning the rules like they might change if I looked long enough. They didn't. The handwriting stayed sharp and ugly. I told myself this was part of the job. Isolation messes with people. Sensory deprivation. The previous caretaker probably cracked and decided to mess with the next guy. That explanation fit. It was clean. Comfortable. I made myself dinner. Canned soup heated on a hot plate. The radio stayed off. The landlines stayed silent. The lamps cast a warm yellow glow that felt almost normal. I deliberately turned on one of the ceiling lights. Nothing happened. No flicker. No screaming forest. No cosmic punishment. I left it on while I ate. See, I thought, just rules. Words on paper. After dinner, I did the actual job. Logged weather conditions, checked the horizon for smoke, filled out a form that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 90s. Everything worked. Everything made sense. That should have reassured me. It didn't. Around 11 p.m., the quiet started to feel wrong. Not silent, just thin. The forest sounds were there. Insects, wind through leaves, but they felt distant, like they were being played through bad speakers. I kept catching myself holding my breath, waiting for something else to layer on top of them. Nothing did. I paced the cabin to burn off the nervous energy. Each window showed the same thing. Darkness pressed up against the glass, my own reflection floating faintly over it. I avoided looking directly at my face. Rule 2 echoed in my head even though it wasn't close to 3 a.m. I hated that I remembered the number so easily. Midnight came and went. No footsteps. No knocking. No crying from below. At 12:30, I actually relaxed a little, sat on the cot, scrolled my phone. No service, obviously, but the familiar glow helped. I drafted a text to my sister anyway, telling her the job was weird, but fine. I didn't send it. At 1:10 a.m., I heard a sound I couldn't explain. Scratching. Not on the door. On the glass. Soft. Slow. Like a nail being dragged lightly across a window. I sat up straight. The sound came again. 3 short strokes, then a pause. I crossed the cabin in 3 steps and yanked the curtain aside. Nothing was there. No branches close enough to touch the glass. No birds. No bugs big enough to make that noise. I stared into the dark until my eyes hurt. The scratching didn't happen again. I told myself it was thermal contraction, metal cooling. Old structures make noises. That's what Google would say if I could Google it.
I went back to the cot, but I didn't lie down. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. I almost screamed. It was just the alarm I'd set earlier, a reminder to check the time. 2 a.m., 17 minutes before something was supposed to happen. Rule 7. I laughed quietly, shaking my head. "This is so stupid," I whispered. I stood in the middle of the cabin and waited. 2:16. The insects outside chirped. The wind sighed through the trees. 2:17. Everything stopped. Not faded, not quieted. Stopped. The forest went dead silent, like someone had flipped a switch. No insects, no wind, no distant animal calls. The pressure in my ears changed, popping painfully. I suddenly felt very small, very visible. I remembered the rule. Close your eyes. I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed at me to look, to check the windows, to make sure nothing had stepped closer while the world held its breath. My eyes stayed open. At 2:18, I realized I could hear something new. Breathing. Not mine. Below the floor. Slow, deep, patient. And then, from directly under the cabin, something began to climb.
I don't remember turning the lamps on. I remember screaming. I remember backing into the desk so hard it bruised my hip. I remember my heart trying to claw its way out of my throat. Then the lamps were on. All of them. Warm yellow light flooding the cabin like nothing was wrong. The scratching above me stopped. That was worse. Silence after a sound like that doesn't mean safety. It means attention. I stood there shaking, staring at the ceiling. The metal panels were smooth, unbroken. No holes, no seams wide enough for anything to fit through. I told myself my fingers had brushed the cord, that fear had filled in the rest. But the smell of copper hadn't gone away. It lingered, heavy, sweet, and wrong. I wiped my hand on my pants. My skin felt tacky. When I looked down, my palm was smeared red. I hadn't cut myself. I washed my hands in the sink until the water ran clear, keeping my eyes locked on the wall where a mirror should have been. The absence felt deliberate, like a missing tooth you can't stop touching with your tongue. When I turned the faucet off, I realized something else. The forest was loud again. Too loud. Insects screamed from every direction, not chirping, screaming. The sound crawled over my skin, setting my teeth on edge. It felt like the woods were trying to drown something out, or warn me. I checked the time. 1:48 a.m. Too early for footsteps, too early for crying, too early for anything according to the list. I sat on the floor with my back against the desk, knees pulled to my chest. I kept telling myself to breathe. In, out. Count it. Stay grounded. That's when I heard it. Not from above, from below. A low, wet sound, like something heavy being dragged across dirt. Slow, deliberate, circling the base of the tower. I crawled to the nearest window and stopped myself inches from the glass. Rule 3, don't approach the windows. I stayed where I was and listened. The sound grew louder, closer. It was joined by another noise, one that made my stomach twist. Sniffing. Long, deep inhales, like whatever it was had found something interesting. Found me. The stairs creaked. One step, then another. The metal groaned under the weight. Not light footsteps like before. These were heavy, confident. Each step rang through the tower, vibrating up through the floor into my bones. I pressed my hands over my mouth to keep from making a sound. The breathing came back, not below the floor this time. On the stairs. Close. I stared at the door. The handle was still. The lock was still thrown. I watched it like it might start turning on its own. Step. Step. Pause. The sound stopped right outside the cabin. I counted my breaths. 1, 2, 3. A shadow passed under the door. Not a clean line, not the shape of legs or feet. It was uneven, like something with too many joints shifting its weight. There was a soft thump against the wood, not a knock, more like a forehead resting against wood. Then a voice. It said. Just that. A pleased sound, like tasting something sweet. My vision blurred. Tears streamed down my face without me realizing it. Rule 6 screamed in my head. Do not open the door. Do not speak. Do not acknowledge them. The handle rattled gently. Once. Twice. Then it stopped. I thought it had left. I almost cried in relief. Then it spoke again. You left the lights on. My blood went cold. The voice was wrong, too close, too familiar. It sounded like it was speaking from inside my skull instead of through the door. I don't like when you leave the lights on, it said softly. The handle turned. The lock held. Something scratched along the wood, slow, vertical, like a finger being dragged down the door. Can I come in now? The insects outside went silent all at once. I squeezed my eyes shut. I didn't answer. The scratching stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the radio on the desk clicked on. Static hissed through the speaker, loud and sudden. I flinched, heart pounding. The dial hadn't moved. The power switch hadn't been touched. The static crackled, then thinned. A voice came through, clear, calm, speaking my name from inside the cabin, behind me. I didn't turn around. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to look, to confirm where the voice was coming from, to put eyes on the thing that had just said my name from inside a radio that hadn't been touched in years. Rule 4 burned in my head. If the radio turns on by itself, listen. Do not respond. If it calls you by name, unplug it. My legs felt like wet sand as I reached backward, blindly, fingers searching for the plug behind the desk. The static hissed softly, like breath through teeth. Hey, the radio said again. My name. Spoken exactly the way my sister says it when she's worried. I found the cord and yanked. The radio went dead instantly. The silence that followed was suffocating. The insects didn't come back. The forest stayed quiet. The thing at the door laughed. It was a soft sound, amused, like I'd just done something cute. That's rude, it said. I slid farther away from the door, keeping my back to the desk, eyes fixed on the handle. The smell of copper thickened until it made me nauseous. Then there was another sound. Footsteps. Not on the stairs. On the ground. Fast. Approaching. I frowned, confusion cutting through the fear for just a second. Whatever was at the door hadn't left. I could feel it there, pressed close, waiting. The footsteps stopped below the tower. A human voice called out. Hello? Male. Breathless. Normal. I'm sorry, the voice said. I didn't mean to scare you. My car broke down. I saw the light. I froze. That voice didn't sound wrong. It sounded tired, cold, a little embarrassed. I just need to use your phone, the man called up. Just for a minute. I crawled toward the window despite myself, stopping short of the glass. I stayed low, peering out from beneath the curtain. A man stood at the base of the tower. At least, he looked like a man. Hiking boots, dirty jeans, a jacket zipped up to his chin, a knit cap pulled low over his forehead. He held one arm close to his body, like he was hurt. He waved when he saw the movement of the curtain. Hey, he said. Thank God. I thought no one was here. Rule 6 clawed at my skull. There are no visitors. Do not open the door. Do not speak. The thing on the other side of the cabin door shifted. I heard the soft creak of wood as it leaned away, giving the illusion of space, like it wanted me to choose. "I'm not asking to come in," the man said quickly. "I swear, I'll stay right here. I just need to call for help." He looked up at the tower. His face was pale, lips blue. He shivered violently. "I think I'm lost," he added. "Everything went quiet out here. You hear that?" I did. The silence pressed in again, deep and absolute. The insects were gone. The man's breath puffed in the cold air. I watched it carefully. It fogged. That felt important. "I've been walking in circles for hours. I keep ending up back here." My chest tightened. Behind me, inside the cabin, something wet slid across the floor. Slow, deliberate. The man below frowned. "Is someone else with you?" he asked, squinting. "I thought I heard—" A loud bang echoed as something hit the cabin door from the inside. The man jumped. What the hell was that? I pressed my forehead against the cool metal wall, shaking. Every part of me wanted to scream at him to run, to get away from the tower, to save himself. But I couldn't speak. The rules wouldn't let me. The man below took a step back, eyes never leaving the door above. "Look," he said slowly, "if this is a bad time, I can go. I just need you to tell me which way the road is." His voice cracked. "I don't think I'm supposed to be here." The thing inside the cabin laughed again, closer this time. I felt its breath on my neck. It smelled like copper and rot. The handle on the door twisted from inside. The man looked up sharply. "Who are you talking to?" he called. The door began to open, not outward, inward, like something was pulling it open from my side. I scrambled backward, heart pounding, watching in horror as the lock slid free on its own. The door creaked open a few inches. Darkness pooled in the gap. A hand reached through. Too many fingers, bent at the wrong angles. The man below screamed, and then he looked straight at me and said very calmly, "Oh, that's not a tower." The man didn't finish screaming. 1 second his mouth was open, eyes locked on the thing reaching out of the tower. The next, the sound cut off like someone had yanked a plug from a wall. The hand withdrew. The door slammed shut so hard the glass rattled. The lock snapped back into place on its own. I was alone again. I stayed on the floor, shaking so badly my teeth clacked together. My ears rang. The silence outside pressed in, thick and heavy, like the forest was holding its breath after watching something messy. I crawled to the window and looked down. The clearing was empty. No man, no footprints, no sign anyone had ever been there at all. The dirt around the base of the tower was smooth and undisturbed, like it hadn't been touched in days. I gagged. The smell of copper was everywhere now. It clung to the air, soaked into the walls, coated my tongue. I could taste it every time I swallowed. Something moved behind me. Not fast, not loud. A soft scrape, like skin sliding across metal. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I pressed myself flat against the floor, staring at the crack under the door, waiting to see if something leaked through. Shadows shifted on the other side of the cabin, stretched and wrong, like light was bending around a shape that didn't fully exist. Then came the scratching, not above me this time, on the windows. All of them, at once. Short, sharp scrapes, dozens of points of contact dragging down the glass in uneven rhythms. I squeezed my eyes shut, hands clamped over my ears, but I could still feel it through the floor, through the walls, vibrating into my bones. Something thumped onto the roof, then another. Heavy impacts, metal groaning under the weight. Footsteps began pacing overhead, slow, purposeful, like whatever was up there knew exactly where I was standing below. I screamed. I didn't mean to. It tore out of me, raw and broken. The sound echoed inside the glass cabin and bounced back at me, distorted. The footsteps stopped. The scratching paused. For one awful moment, everything was still. Then something slammed down on the roof hard enough to dent it inward. I shrieked and scrambled toward the desk, knocking the chair over. The lamps flickered wildly, shadows jumping across the walls. The windows rattled as if something massive was pressing its face against the glass. A shape slid past the west window. Too tall, too thin. It moved like a reflection instead of a body, limbs stretching and snapping back as it passed out of view. I remembered Rule 8 just as my legs gave out and I collapsed into the chair facing west. I tried to get up. I couldn't. My body locked in place, muscles rigid, eyes fixed on the glass. The forest outside twisted, trees bent inward, their trunks curving like spines. The darkness between them deepened, thickening into something almost solid. A figure stepped forward from between the trees. It looked like me. Same height, same build, same clothes. Its face was wrong. Features were slightly off, like someone had tried to recreate me from memory and rushed the details. Eyes too wide, smile too stretched. It raised a hand. I raised mine too. I didn't want to. It waved. I waved back. Panic surged through me as I realized I wasn't in control of my own body anymore. I felt like a passenger, trapped behind my eyes, forced to watch as the thing outside mirrored every tiny movement I made. Its mouth opened. My jaw opened too. No, I tried to say. The word came out of both of us at the same time. The lights went out. All of them. The cabin plunged into darkness so complete it felt physical. I screamed again, the sound ripping through my throat, and suddenly my body snapped free. I fell forward, hitting the floor hard, gasping for breath. The lamps flickered back on. The window was empty. The forest looked normal again. I lay there sobbing, chest heaving, nails digging into the floor until my fingers went numb. My head pounded, my throat burned. My mind felt fractured like it was trying to hold too many impossible things at once. I didn't know how long I stayed like that. Eventually the sounds stopped. No scratching, no footsteps, no breathing. Just the distant hum of insects, timid and unsure, slowly creeping back into the night. I dragged myself to the desk and pulled the binder toward me with shaking hands. I flipped past the rules, past the warnings, until I found what I hadn't noticed before. A second section. Logs. Dates. Times. Short, frantic entries written in the same heavy hand as the rules. The last entry was circled in red. I saw myself tonight. I think it saw me first. The page after that was blank, except for one fresh line of writing at the bottom. Still wet. Still bleeding through the paper. You shouldn't have sat in the chair. Something exhaled softly behind me, close enough that its breath stirred the hair on my neck.
I didn't turn around. I don't know how many times I've written that now, but it keeps being true. Turning around feels like consent, like acknowledging it makes whatever is behind me more solid. The breath on my neck faded, slowly, reluctantly, like it was disappointed. I stayed perfectly still for a long time, staring at the page in the binder. The ink on the last line glistened under the lamp, dark and wet, slowly soaking into the paper fibers. It hadn't been there before. I forced myself to flip back through the log entries. The handwriting stayed consistent, tight, pressed hard, but the tone changed as the days went on. The early entries were boring, routine, weather notes, bored complaints, jokes about cabin fever. Then the rules started appearing. Not all at once, added one by one. Day 4. Heard something on the stairs last night, probably animals. Still writing it down just in case. Day 7. Whoever left the note wasn't kidding. The silence at 2:17 is real. It hurts. Day 9. Didn't follow Rule 3. I looked out the window. It knew. My throat tightened. The next few pages were messier. Ink smeared. Words crossed out so hard the paper tore. Day 12. I think the tower attracts them, or feeds them, or hides us from something worse. Day 14. Do not trust anything that looks lost. I flipped faster. Day 18. The radio said my name today. I unplugged it. It laughed. Day 20. I saw another tower in the trees last night. It wasn't there this morning. My pulse thudded in my ears. Day 23. I woke up in the chair again. I don't remember sitting down. There was frost on the inside of the glass. Day 24. I think it wants me to replace it. I swallowed hard. The entries grew shorter after that. Single sentences, fragments. Something is wearing my voice. I smell copper all the time now. I don't sleep. If I sleep, it moves things. I broke Rule 1 again. I wanted to see it clearly. The last dated entry made my hands shake. Day 28. I tried to leave. There was no explanation, just that sentence, written over and over again across the page, each time darker, deeper, until the pen had ripped through. I flipped the page. This one wasn't dated. I understand the rules now. They aren't for safety. They're for containment. My skin crawled. They don't keep you alive. They keep it inside. A soft creak echoed through the cabin. Not from the door, from the stairs. Inside the tower. I froze, listening. Footsteps. Slow, careful, coming up. Not heavy like before. These were light, measured, like someone trying not to be heard. The previous caretaker hadn't been alone. That thought hit me like a physical blow. I scanned the rest of the binder desperately. There are times when it pretends to help, when it wants something, when it wants you to choose. Another creak. Closer now. My gaze snagged on a folded page near the back. It was thicker than the others, folded over itself several times, corners worn soft. I opened it. A map. Hand-drawn. Crude but detailed. The tower marked at the center. Trails branching out. Landmarks labeled in shaky writing. And then the things that shouldn't have been there. Circles in the woods. Notes scribbled beside them. Do not approach when they hum. Moves closer after storms. Only visible when you're tired. At the bottom of the map, written in block letters, the road does not lead out. The footsteps reached the landing below the cabin. I could hear breathing again. Shallow, almost human. I closed the binder quietly and slid it under the desk. The door handle didn't move. Instead, there was a knock. 3 soft taps. Polite. My name was spoken from the other side. Not wrong this time. Not distorted. Perfect. It's okay, it said gently. I read the book too. My stomach dropped. I made the same mistakes. You don't have to. The handle stayed still. No rattling, no forcing. Just waiting. I know you're scared, it said. I was. The word was. Past tense. Something scraped lightly along the doorframe, slow and absent-minded, like a finger tracing grooves in wood. You can rest now, the whisper said. I can watch the tower for you. I backed away until I hit the west-facing chair. The lamps flickered. The window darkened. In the glass, my reflection wavered, and this time when it smiled, I felt my face smiling back.
I don't remember standing up. One moment I was pressed against the chair, lungs burning, staring at my reflection as it smiled without my permission. The next, I was in the middle of the cabin, hands on the desk, binder open again like I'd never closed it, like I'd rewound myself. The lamps were steady, no flicker, no hum. The forest outside was loud, normal loud. Insects chirping, wind in the branches. It felt like waking up from a nightmare and realizing the room is exactly how you left it. My watch said 11:03 p.m. That wasn't possible. The last thing I remembered clearly was 2-something. After the silence, after the visitor, after the rules started breaking me down into pieces. I checked my phone. 11:03 p.m. Same time. No missed alarms, no notifications, battery full. My mouth went dry. I stumbled to the window and looked out. The clearing was empty, the dirt undisturbed. The tower stairs looked normal. The steps ended exactly where they should. No extra shadow, no movement. I laughed, sharp and hysterical, and slapped my own face. The sting grounded me. Pain was real. Pain meant I was awake. Okay, I said out loud. Okay. Reset. Hallucination. Sleep deprivation. I glanced at the chair by the west window. I was standing in front of it, facing west. My stomach dropped. I lurched away from the window and nearly tripped over my own feet. The chair was exactly where it had always been, untouched. No frost, no dents, no sign anything strange had happened. I turned back to the desk. The binder was closed. I was sure I'd left it open. I opened it again with shaking hands. The logbook pages were different. The early entries were gone. Not torn out, rewritten. Different handwriting now, cleaner, more confident. Day 1. Arrived on time, tower is quiet, rules left by previous caretaker are overblown. My heart hammered. Day 2. Nothing unusual, I think the job suits me. I flipped faster. Day 5. I don't think I need to follow all of these. The dates matched the calendar on the wall. They were today's date, my date. I slammed the binder shut and backed away. No, I whispered. No, no, no. The radio clicked. Not static, a low hum, like power flowing through it after a long time unused. I stared at it frozen. Don't, I whispered, even though I knew better. The radio crackled. Then my voice came through the speaker, breathing hard, panicked. I don't remember standing up, it said. My blood went cold. The recording continued. I think time is looping or skipping or I'm losing it. The exact words I just thought. I unplugged the radio violently and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. The voice cut off mid-sentence. Silence rushed in to fill the gap. I stood there trembling, surrounded by proof that reality was fraying at the edges. That's when I noticed the window. Not the reflection. The forest. There was something wrong with it. The trees were too close. Not by much, just enough to notice if you were looking hard. Branches pressed nearer to the glass than they had before. Shadows pooled thicker at their bases. The tower hadn't moved. The forest had. I stepped back. The trees didn't. I stepped forward again. Neither did they. But when I blinked, one of them was closer. I squeezed my eyes shut and opened them again. Closer still. A slow knock sounded behind me. Not at the door. On the inside wall. 3 taps. Polite. I turned. There was a door there that hadn't existed before. Wooden, old, painted the same dull green as the rest of the cabin walls, but wrong somehow. Too flat, like it had been painted on and decided to become real. The handle was already turning. No, I said hoarsely. The door opened inward. The space beyond it wasn't another room. It was the staircase. But wrong. It spiraled upward instead of down, vanishing into darkness above the ceiling. Each step was slightly uneven, like they'd been grown instead of built. Someone was standing on the stairs. Me. Not quite. It looked older, thinner, eyes sunken, skin gray and stretched tight over bone. It smiled when it saw me. "You're early," it said in my voice. I shook my head violently. "This isn't real." It stepped down 1 stair. The tower creaked in response. "I said the same thing," it replied. "You still have time. That's good." "Time for what?" I demanded. It tilted its head, listening to something I couldn't hear. "To choose," it said. The lamps flickered. Behind the thing on the stairs, more footsteps echoed. Not one, many. The forest outside went silent again. My watch buzzed. 2:16 a.m., and from somewhere above the ceiling, something began to laugh. The laughter above the ceiling wasn't loud. That was the worst part. It was soft, warm, almost affectionate, like someone laughing at a private joke you weren't meant to hear yet. My watch buzzed again. 2:17 a.m. The forest outside died all at once. No insects, no wind, no life. The silence slammed into my ears so hard it made me dizzy. I tasted copper immediately. The thing on the stairs smiled wider. "Close your eyes," it said gently. "That's one you still remember, right?" I staggered backward, my heel catching on the chair leg. I didn't sit. I refused to sit. My heart was hammering so violently I thought I might black out. Behind me, the west window darkened. Not with night, with reflection. The glass turned glossy, mirror smooth, swallowing the forest entirely. It reflected the cabin perfectly. The desk, the lamps, the chair. Me. Rule 2 screamed in my head. Do not look at your reflection after 3 a.m. It wasn't 3 yet. That thought wormed its way in, slick and poisonous. I glanced at my watch again. My hands were shaking so badly the numbers blurred. 2:17. Still safe. Still fine. Still... The thing on the stairs took another step down. The tower groaned. The sound crawled through the metal supports and into my bones. "You always argue about the rules," it said. "That's why it likes you." "What are you?" I whispered. It paused, considering. "A reminder," it said finally. "A replacement. Depends how well you do." The laughter above the ceiling stopped. Something heavy shifted. I felt pressure on my scalp, like fingers resting there, testing. The reflection in the window moved, not with me. It leaned closer to the glass, eyes bright, smiling far too wide. Its mouth moved slightly out of sync with mine. "Don't," I whispered to myself. "Don't look." But fear does something awful to logic. It makes you greedy for certainty, for proof. I needed to see it clearly, needed to know what was real. I told myself one look wouldn't matter, just a glance. I raised my eyes and met my reflection's gaze. It wasn't me, not fully. Its eyes were wrong, too deep, like holes drilled into something hollow. When it smiled, I felt my own cheeks stretch painfully, muscles pulling against my will. The reflection lifted a hand. I felt my arms start to rise. "No," I gasped, fighting my own body. My muscles screamed as I forced my arm down, nails digging into my thigh hard enough to draw blood. The reflection frowned, genuinely offended. The air thickened. The lamps dimmed. Shadows bled out of corners, pooling on the floor like spilled ink. Behind me, the thing on the stairs sighed. "That's it. You saw it." The reflection leaned forward until its forehead pressed against the glass. The sound it made wasn't a thump. It was wet. Its mouth opened, and something else opened behind its eyes. I screamed and slammed my eyes shut, collapsing to the floor, hands clawing at my face like I could tear my vision out entirely. The world lurched. My stomach flipped violently, like falling in an elevator. My ears rang. The smell of copper became overwhelming, choking. I heard the glass crack, then shatter. Cold air rushed over me. The silence broke, replaced by a roar of sound, forest noise, footsteps, breathing, whispering, all layered on top of each other. I dared to open my eyes. The window was intact. No cracks, no shards. But the reflection was gone. So was the chair. So was the desk. The cabin had changed. The walls were closer now, the ceiling lower. The lamps flickered weakly, casting long, twitching shadows. The stairs door was gone. In its place was bare wall, smeared with something dark and sticky. Handprints. Not mine. The radio sat on the floor in front of me. Whole. Plugged in. It crackled to life. "You weren't supposed to do that," my voice said from the speaker. Footsteps echoed all around me now. Not just above, not just below. Inside the walls, in the floor, in my head. The radio hissed, then cleared. "Run," it said. And at the same moment, every door in the cabin slammed open at once. I ran. Not toward any door, not toward the stairs. I ran sideways, stumbling, slipping on something slick that coated the floor. The cabin felt smaller with every step, walls closing in, corners stretching where they shouldn't. The doors that had slammed open didn't lead anywhere real. One opened into the forest, but the trees were wrong, bent inward, overlapping, their branches knitting together like ribs. Another opened onto the staircase, except it went down and up at the same time, steps folding over each other in a way that made my eyes ache. I chose neither. I dove under the desk. It shouldn't have been there. I was sure it was gone, but there it was again, solid and familiar, like the cabin was mocking me with pieces of itself. I curled into a ball, hands over my mouth, trying not to sob. That's when I heard it come inside. Not footsteps. Not exactly. It sounded like weight settling, like something pressing itself into the room from all directions at once. The walls creaked. The ceiling bowed slightly, dust drifting down in slow, lazy spirals. The smell of rot hit me next. Thick, sweet, wrong. It coated my tongue and made my stomach lurch. Breathing followed. Close. Too close. Wet breaths. Labored. Curious. Something brushed the edge of the desk. I bit down hard on my knuckle to keep from screaming. A shape passed in front of the lamps, its shadow warped across the walls, stretching, splitting, recombining. Too many limbs, too many joints. It moved like it was learning gravity as it went. It stopped. I could feel it crouch. The floor groaned inches from my face. "Found you," it whispered. Not with a mouth, with pressure, with the air itself pushing words into my skull. I squeezed my eyes shut, shaking. The desk shuddered as fingers curled around its edge. They scraped softly along the wood, nails clicking, testing. One finger slid under the desk and brushed my shoe. I jerked despite myself. The thing inhaled sharply. There was delight in the sound. "Oh, you're still warm." I kicked out blindly and felt my foot connect with something soft and elastic. The thing hissed, a sound like steam escaping meat. The desk was wrenched violently upward and thrown across the cabin, smashing into the wall. I scrambled backward on my hands and knees, slipping in the dark smear on the floor. My palm came away sticky and red. I didn't look at it. I couldn't look at it. The lamps flickered again, plunging half the cabin into shadow. The thing stood between me and the doors now. It was tall, much taller than before. Its shape kept changing when I tried to focus on it, like my brain refused to settle on a single outline. Skin hung in folds that didn't quite line up. Parts of it looked almost human, almost familiar. It tilted its head. "You broke the rules," it said gently. "That means you're allowed to be hunted." It took a step toward me. The floor dipped under its weight. I scrambled backward until my shoulders hit the wall. There was nowhere else to go. The thing leaned down. Its face came apart as it did, pieces sliding, reordering, trying on expressions. It chose one that looked like me. My face, my fear, my smile. "You can still make this easier," it said. "Stop running." Something banged against the cabin from the outside. Hard. Then again. The walls rattled. The thing paused, annoyed, and glanced toward the noise. That was my chance. I lunged sideways, dove through the nearest open doorway, and fell. Not down, not out, sideways into darkness. I hit something hard and rolled, gasping, lungs burning. The door slammed shut behind me with a final echoing boom. I lay there shaking, listening to my own heartbeat thunder in my ears. Then I realized where I was. The stairs. The real stairs. Going down. And above me, from the other side of the door, something began to scratch. Fast. Eager. Like it knew exactly where I'd gone. And it was coming after me.
The stairs shook as I scrambled down them. I didn't think, I didn't plan, I just moved. My hands burned as I grabbed the cold metal railing, my boots slipping on steps that suddenly felt too narrow, too steep. Every breath tore at my chest like broken glass.
Above me, the scratching turned into pounding. The door bulged outward with each hit. It wouldn't hold. I half fell, half ran down the spiral, counting steps without meaning to. 10, 20, 30. Too many. There were too many again. The forest floor should have been closer by now. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The sudden vibration nearly made me lose my footing. I almost ignored it, almost threw the phone away, but reflex won. No signal bars, no service, but the screen was lit. A missed call. From my own number. Then another buzz. A text message appeared. "Why are you running?" My blood ran cold. I jammed the phone back into my pocket and kept going, lungs screaming, legs shaking. The sounds above me changed. Not pounding anymore. Footsteps. Careful. Unhurried. It was following, but it wasn't chasing. It didn't need to. I burst out of the tree line and into the clearing, skidding to a stop on loose dirt. My car sat exactly where I'd left it, moonlight glinting off the windshield like a promise. Hope hit me so hard it almost knocked me over. I fumbled with my keys, hands slick with sweat and blood. The forest felt wrong around me, too close, trees leaning in, branches creaking softly like joints flexing. I reached the car and yanked the door open. Inside smelled stale, familiar, safe. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and jammed the key into the ignition. Nothing. The engine didn't even click. "Come on," I whispered, slamming my hand against the steering wheel. "Please, please." I tried again. Nothing. My phone buzzed. I looked despite myself. Another text. "The road does not lead out." The headlights flickered on by themselves. In their glow, I saw something that made my stomach drop. There were tire tracks in the dirt, leading away from the car. Fresh. But I hadn't driven anywhere. They curved toward the trees, vanishing between the trunks. The passenger door handle twitched. Once. Twice. I held my breath, staring at it. A soft knock sounded on the window beside my head. 3 taps. Polite. I didn't look. "I tried the car too," a voice said from outside. My own voice. Calm, sympathetic. "It never works when you want it to." The knocking moved. Rear window. Another set of taps. Then another. All around the car now. A ring of soft, patient knocking moving from window to window like fingers drumming on a table. "You can stay. You already belong here more than you think." The forest went silent. I glanced up. The tower loomed above the trees, its windows dark except for one faint pulsing glow near the top. It looked closer than it should have been, taller, like it had grown. The radio in my car crackled to life. I don't have a radio. Static filled the cabin, then thinned. "You can't leave. You haven't finished your shift." The headlights died. The darkness outside pressed in, thick and absolute. I could feel eyes on me from every direction. Something brushed the roof of the car, then slid across it. Slow, deliberate. I remembered the map in the binder. The road does not lead out. The knocking stopped. For one horrible moment, everything was still. Then the driver's side window began to fog from the outside. A hand pressed against the glass. Not quite human. Too many joints. The fingers bent the wrong way as they spread, flattening, leaving streaks of moisture behind. My door handle clicked. Unlocked. By itself. I screamed and kicked the door open, throwing myself back into the clearing. I hit the ground hard, air exploding out of my lungs. The car door slammed shut behind me. When I looked back, the car was gone. No sound, no fading, just gone. The clearing was empty. The tower stood at its center again, stairs gleaming faintly in the moonlight, inviting. Above me, something shifted in the trees. Below me, the ground vibrated softly, like something enormous turning over in its sleep. And from the tower, clear and bright, a light turned on. The light from the tower didn't just glow. It watched. I stood there shaking. Dirt ground into my palms, my scream still echoing inside my skull. The forest had rearranged itself again. Trees closer, shadows thicker, paths erased like they'd never existed. There was no clearing anymore. Just me and the tower. Dead center. Waiting. I tried to run. My legs moved, but the distance didn't change. Every step felt like wading through water that pushed back just enough to remind me I wasn't in control anymore. The tower stayed perfectly framed in my vision, growing sharper with every breath. The stairwell began to creak, not from my weight, from above. Something was coming down, slowly, unhurried. Each step rang with hollow certainty, metal groaning like it was relieved to be used again. The sound threaded straight through my chest and wrapped around my heart. My phone buzzed one last time. No notification this time, just the screen lighting up. The binder rules filled the display, scrolling by themselves. Do not leave the tower unattended. Do not respond to voices using your name. If you see yourself, do not acknowledge it. The light must remain on. The last rule flashed, bold and pulsing. The light must remain on. The stairwell door opened. I saw me step out. Not a copy, not a reflection, an earlier version. Same jacket, same boots, same tired slouch I'd had when I first arrived. He hadn't reached the panic yet. Behind him, something tall and thin stayed just inside the doorway, its shape breaking the light into angles that hurt to look at. It leaned close to his ear, guiding him, training him. He looked straight at me. For half a second, recognition flickered. Then the thing behind him shifted, and his expression smoothed out. Blank. He turned away from me and started back up the stairs. "No," I whispered. My voice worked again. That felt wrong. I ran, this time toward the tower. The air loosened its grip like it wanted me to make this choice. My feet hit the first step, and the metal was warm under my hands. Alive. The door slammed shut behind me as soon as I crossed the threshold. Inside, the tower smelled of dust, ozone, and something older, like damp stone that remembered being underground. The stairs spiraled up forever, light pooling above me in weak, sickly halos. The glow at the top pulsed faster now, excited. As I climbed, I noticed scratches on the walls, not random, tally marks. Hundreds, thousands. Some were crossed out, some were circled, some were gouged so deep the metal curled back on itself. Names were carved between them, some scratched out, some repeated. Mine was there, more than once. My phone went dark as I reached the top platform. The light fixture hummed softly, brighter than before, too bright. The bulb inside was wrong, shaped like a spiral, glowing from the inside as if something were coiled around its filament. A switch sat beside it. Up, on. Down, off. My reflection stared back at me in the glass casing, but it didn't move when I did. It smiled. "You're late," it said softly. "I've been covering for you." Behind me, the stairs began to fill with footsteps. Not one set, many. Coming up. The rules echoed in my head. The light must remain on. I understood then. This wasn't a job. It was a handoff. And I was standing at the exact moment where every version of me had failed, paused, or giving in. The switch waited. So did the dark.
I don't know how long I stood there. Time had stopped behaving like something I could trust. Seconds stretched, minutes folded in on themselves. The hum of the light filled my skull until it felt like it was thinking for me. The footsteps on the stairs stopped just below the platform. All of them. Silence followed, thick, expectant. My reflection pressed closer to the glass of the light casing. Its smile widened in a way my face shouldn't be able to do. Skin stretched too far, eyes reflecting the spiral bulb instead of the room. "You always hesitate here," it said, calm, patient. "That's why it hurts." I thought of the rules, all of them, the ones that didn't make sense until they did.
Don't look at the mirrors after 3 a.m. Don't respond if you hear your name. If the crying starts, lock the door. The light must remain on. None of them said why. I backed away from the switch. The footsteps resumed. Closer this time. Something dragged along the stair rail, metal screeching like teeth grinding together. The air grew cold enough to fog my breath, and with it came a smell. Rot, wet earth, old fur. The thing behind my earlier self stepped onto the platform. It didn't fully emerge. It couldn't. The light hurt it. I could tell by the way its outline frayed at the edges, by how it stayed just far enough back to avoid the brightest spill. Its shape was wrong in a way that my eyes slid off it. Too tall, too narrow, bending in places bones shouldn't. More shapes crowded behind it on the stairs. Some looked human. Some tried to. I realized then what the tallies on the wall were. Not days. Attempts. "Turn it off," my reflection whispered. "You're so tired. You've earned the dark." The thing took one step forward. The light flickered. I screamed and slapped the switch up harder, as if force mattered. The bulb flared white-hot, the spiral inside writhing like it had been woken violently from sleep. The thing recoiled. It shrieked. Not loud. Close, like it was screaming directly into my bones. The shapes on the stairs scattered, slamming into each other as they retreated downward. The tall one stumbled back into the stairwell, its outline tearing like wet paper. The door slammed shut on its own. I collapsed to the floor, gasping. The light stabilized. Still too bright. Still watching. My reflection was gone. Outside, the sky began to change. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. Just a slow bleeding of color into the black. Deep blue, then gray, then the faintest hint of orange on the horizon, filtered through trees that no longer seemed quite so close. Morning. I laughed. It came out wrong. Half sob, half hiccup. I didn't sleep. I didn't blink. Every time my eyes closed, I felt something move behind them. The tower stayed quiet as the sun rose. Birds started singing. Real birds, I think. The forest stretched back into something resembling normal distance. The pressure in the air eased, like a hand loosening its grip on my throat. The light dimmed on its own. Not off, just softer, satisfied. I packed without thinking, threw everything into my bag, didn't look at the walls again, didn't look at the stairs longer than necessary, didn't touch the switch. As I descended, I noticed something carved under the underside of the platform, small and easy to miss. "You don't quit. You're replaced." Outside, my car sat where I'd left it. Normal. Intact. The forest looked like a forest again. I didn't question it. The engine started on the first try. As I drove away, the tower shrank in the rearview mirror, just a thin silhouette against the trees. For one horrible moment, I thought I saw movement at the top, someone standing in the light, watching me go. My phone vibrated as soon as I hit the main road. Signal. A single notification. An email. Subject: Fire lookout position. Immediate opening. Pay: increased. I didn't open it. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat and kept driving, heart pounding, sunlight burning my eyes like I didn't deserve it. I thought it was over. I was wrong, because later that afternoon I stopped for gas, and on the corkboard by the register, half covered by flyers for lost dogs and garage sales, was a familiar piece of paper. Printed rules, 12 of them, and a handwritten note at the bottom. "If you're reading this, I didn't last. Please don't make my mistake." The cashier smiled at me. Too wide. "Rough night?" he asked, and behind his eyes, I saw the spiral.
I didn't answer the cashier. I couldn't. My mouth opened, but nothing came out except a thin wheeze that didn't sound human even to me. The spiral in his eyes pulsed once, slow and deliberate, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. He kept smiling, waiting. I grabbed my change off the counter so hard the coins cut into my palm. The pain helped. It grounded me just enough to turn and walk out without running. I could feel his gaze follow me through the glass doors, feel it cling to my back like static. The bell rang when I left. Too loud. I didn't look back. I got in the car and locked the doors, hands shaking so badly I missed the key slot twice. When the engine finally turned over, I floored it out of the parking lot, tires screaming. In the mirror, the gas station looked normal. Too normal. No tower, no forest. Just the cheap building under a blue sky. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. I drove for hours. I didn't stop. I didn't answer calls. I didn't check my phone. Every time I slowed down, every time I stopped at a red light, I felt it. That pressure, like something behind my eyes was leaning forward, paying attention again. I made it home just before dark. My apartment felt wrong the second I stepped inside. Not hostile, prepared, like a hotel room waiting for the next guest. I checked every mirror, every closet, under the bed, behind the shower curtain. Nothing. No spirals, no tall shapes folded into corners. Still, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with every light on until dawn, flinching at every sound from the street. When morning came and nothing happened, I almost believed I'd escaped. Almost. 3 days later, I saw the article. It was buried halfway down a local news site, sandwiched between weather updates and a human interest story. No photo, just text. Seasonal fire lookout missing. Authorities say no signs of struggle. The name wasn't mine. It was the guy after me. 22 years old, college student, took a high-paying temporary job in a remote location. Last radio check-in reported unusual lights and movement near the stairs. Search teams found the tower empty, light still on. No body. I threw up in my sink. That night, the email came back. Same subject line, same pay, higher again. I deleted it. The next morning, it was there again. And again the next day. Different senders, different addresses, always the same job, always urgent, always phrased like it was doing me a favor. That's when I realized the worst part. It doesn't chase you. It doesn't need to. It waits for the kind of person who opens those emails, the kind of person who's tired, desperate, broke, the kind of person who laughs at rules because they don't have the energy to be afraid yet. I quit my job. I moved. I changed my number. I stopped opening unfamiliar messages. I covered the mirrors in my apartment after 3 a.m. without knowing why. Then remembered too late. Sometimes when I'm half asleep, I hear stairs. Metal ones. Slow, creaking steps that stop just outside whatever room I'm in. Sometimes I wake up with the smell of ozone in my nose and my phone glowing on the nightstand, open to an email I don't remember clicking. Sometimes I catch my reflection smiling when I'm not. If you're reading this and you've seen a posting that pays too well for too little work, listen to me. If they give you rules, follow them. If the rules don't make sense, follow them harder. If you think you're special, that you'll be the exception, you won't be. I don't know how long the gap lasts between replacements. I don't know if the thing needs rest or if it just enjoys the quiet between screams. What I do know is this: the light is still on. And somewhere out there, right now, someone is packing their bags, laughing at a list of rules they haven't broken yet. If that's you, don't take the job. And if you already have, God help you. Because the shift never ends.